Welcome to the Vandy Sports Podcast. I am your host, Chris Lee. Our guest today is Tim Thompson, who is the color commentator for Vanderbilt basketball. This episode presented by the Well Coffee House, which turns coffee into water. The Well is a coffee house with a mission to bring clean water to the world. To date, over 30 communities across the globe now have access to safe water, health, and hope. You can make an impact by visiting a Well Coffee House today. There are locations in the Nashville area in Brentwood, Green Hills, downtown, and Bellevue. You can get more information at wellcoffeehouse.org. The Well Coffee House, where coffee changes lives. We thank our other co-presenting sponsor, Wellspire, Nashville's Learning and Development Center, which is located in the Gulch. Our news is presented by Sutherland and Belk, a local injury law firm committed to helping those who have been injured in accidents. If you or someone you know has been in a wreck or other accident, reach out to Sutherland and Belk to see what your rights are. You can find their contact info online at sbinjurylaw.com. Vanderbilt loses its opener in SEC play. Saben Lee scores a career-high 27, but Auburn wins the game by an 83-79 score. The Commodores had it tied in the final minute, but could not close. Our guest line is presented to you by our friends at Boll & Branch. Started by Vanderbilt graduates Scott and Missy Tannen. I've slept on their sheets for years and love them. They are fair trade certified, meaning they are made under safe conditions by men and women, treated and paid fairly. Try them free for a month. You can return them, but you're not going to want them. And once you get the sheets, try their mattress, which was voted the best mattress of 2018. Go to bollandbranch.com. That is spelled B-O-L-L. Enter the promo code Vandy and get $50 off your first set of sheets. Tim Thompson joins us now. Tim is the radio color commentator for Vanderbilt men's basketball. Tim was in Auburn last night. I say last night. We do this on Thursday morning. The Commodores lose a close one to Auburn. Tim, hope you're doing well. That was an interesting game last night, and I think a lot more interesting than anybody expected it to be.
Yeah, I think probably everything's based on, how you played previously. And, the SMU game was such that, it was one of those deals where it's like, we lost a 15-point lead and then ended up losing in overtime by, I think, 11 or whatever. And so you have that kind of mindset going into a game like Auburn, who is ranked 5th in the country, and you think, goodness. But I will say this, those kids were pretty resilient last night. And, the game in the first half was kind of back and forth, a little bit of runs, by both teams. And I believe Auburn was up probably, I think their biggest lead in the first half was 6. And then at halftime, I think the halftime score was like, Vanderbilt was down 4. And I think it was, 42-38. And Vanderbilt came out. I told Joe on the radio, I said, hey, the first 5 minutes is pretty important to hear. You don't want to get in a situation where, you get down. And Auburn made a run. They got up double digits. And next thing you know, all of a sudden you look up and you've got Aaron. And Aaron was, pretty much under wraps last night because they were just switching everything on him. And he was really having to work for his shots. But the guy that really played great last night was Saben. And, he's one of those guys that thrives in that kind of game because they're going to get out and pressure you and you're going to be isolated a little bit kind of on your own island, and he thrives on that. And so you could kind of see that he was, he would turn that corner and get going downhill, and he didn't get it. Auburn didn't give him much help, and he would get all the way to the rim. And he had 27 points. He was 10 of 14 last night. And he was 3 for 3 from the 3-point line. He had a couple 3-pointers that were critical in the second half to kind of keep us in touch when it kind of felt like it may have been getting out of hand. But and then Aaron started stepping up and scoring. He had 18. But again, it's one of those deals where you look up and all of a sudden, we're within 4, and then all of a sudden, we've got the ability to tie the game. Jordan Wright goes to the line, knocks down 2 free throws to tie it. And, we just, one of those things where the ball didn't bounce the right way. And, they ended up, making a little bit of a run down the stretch and ended up winning. But I was really proud of the team last night. I thought they laid it all out on the line, and they played hard. You look at a guy like, I thought Jordan Wright grew up a little bit last night. He had 10 points and he hit 4 clutch free throws when we really had to have him. To be honest with you, I thought Educate, his numbers, he only had 5 points, but I thought he played pretty decent last night. He had a chance, down the stretch where he had a couple point blank, shots that he missed. He just wasn't quite physical enough. But again, it was one of those deals where it was kind of a total team effort. So again, I was excited after the game. You lose, but at the same time, you can't take that to the bank. It's still a loss. But I think some of these players grew up a little bit last night on the road.
Well, let's start with that. This is a group of players that has had more than its share of collapses the last few years, and too many for me to even remember, to be honest with you. Last year was just full of them. This year, recently, Vanderbilt nearly blew a lead against Davidson late, hung on and won that one, did not end so well against SMU. And so this is a team that's going to have a pretty fragile psyche heading into Auburn. And I think last year in that spot, because Vanderbilt got down double digits early in the second half, made a small run to get it within single digits, maybe to 6 or 8. Then Auburn goes up, 12, 14 at one point, and Vanderbilt comes
14.
back and ties it at the end. When you're on a losing streak like they're on, they've now lost 22 in a row against Power 5 teams. Obviously, that says a lot about the state of the program, but was there something different in them last night in how they came back, how they hung on, and, give them a break somewhere? Maybe they win that game. Did you sense a difference in confidence with that team last night over what you've seen the last 2 years?
Yeah, a little bit. And I think it's a result of, both Saben and Aaron, being a year older and having, the confidence of saying, hey, we're going to put this team on the back and we're going to go. And so, I do think that's it. Again, this is one game. And, I always, when you start talking about 30 games in a season or whatever, 31 games in a season, I always tell people, it's one game and you got to start, you got to go to the next one. I mean, last week against SMU, everybody was like, oh man, we gave up the 15-point lead. We're not any good, all this kind of stuff. And, the sky's falling. And then, you see a game like this where there's a lot of potential and then all of a sudden it's a long season. You got to get ready for Texas A&M on Saturday. And you got to bring that same kind of effort if they play with the same kind of effort and intensity against Texas A&M on Saturday, I firmly believe they've got a really, really good chance of winning. I don't think Texas A&M is as good as they've been, in the past with Andy Kennedy. And so it'll be interesting to see how they come back off of a pretty good performance against Auburn.
Tim, this roster has limitations. It has serious limitations in the post. It has serious limitations with depth. And I will get to the post in a minute, but you see this in college basketball, especially in NCAA tournament upsets. And I'm not suggesting this is an NCAA team or even an NIT team, but you look at teams sometimes that win in the tournaments and they've got a really good backcourt or a guy that goes off, or in the case of Davidson a few years ago, Steph Curry just blew up and got Davidson to the Elite Eight. What I'm getting at here is this a team where it has two guards, and certainly Aaron Nesmith, the kind of kid that can carry a lot of teams, but the way Saben Lee played last night, you add him to that. Is this a team where just the backcourt of those two is good enough for them to steal some wins that a lot of people don't think they can get on certain nights?
Yeah, I think it's a good point that you make. And my answer is yes. The league's probably not as good as it's been in the past few years. But again, even though with those two, and I think Coach Stackhouse will say the same thing, you got to have like that third guy to step up. And, last night, Jordan Wright stepped up. He had 10 points and he had 7 rebounds. And so, you had one other guy step up. I don't think you can do it with just 2 guys in this league. You got to have some other guys step up. And, Dylan Dessou played pretty good, but he was in foul trouble. And, at the very end of the game, when you needed some perimeter shooters or an extra guy to shoot the ball from the perimeter, he was on the bench. He didn't, he fouled out. And so, again, I think that there's some growing pains, and I think, are there limitations with the roster? Yeah. You look last night at Austin Wiley, a big guy inside like that is going to give us problems. You really down the stretch, you had Jordan Wright guarding, Austin Wiley. That's 6'5" against 6'11", and he did an admirable job. But it is what it is. Just it's kind of a size mismatch, inside, and Auburn tried to take advantage of that. And overall, I thought he did a pretty good job for the size difference. But the one thing that we've got to do, and I think, Auburn exposed it a little bit early, is, just as far as squaring up on people. And, Scotty, as a point guard defensively, he's going against, elite point guards that are really, really quick. And, there were a couple times last night where they tried to isolate on him and, spread everybody out and take him to the basket and that kind of thing. And I think the coaching staff understands that and that kind of thing, but he's got to be better at squaring a guy up and staying in front of him to make sure that secondary part of your defense at the rim, because, now all of a sudden Educate's having to come over and try to block shots and do those kind of things that, potentially can put him into foul trouble. And then the other thing too is the way Auburn plays is they spread you out and isolate you. And then you drive, penetrate, you got to collapse and try to help from the weak side or whatever it is. And then boom, they kick it out to a 3-point shooter. And everybody on that team, except for Wiley, shoots the 3 ball pretty well. And so now all of a sudden that penetration breaks down your defense for a wide open 3, not just a layup to the basket, but for a wide open 3 on the kick out. So that has to probably get better. And Coach Stackhouse, I think he addressed it a little bit last night with Scotty. And again, Scotty's a freshman. It's a learning experience. It's one of those things where, you just got to get better, understand that the SEC is a kind of a different level than what you've been playing at probably the first, 12 games or whatever. And so, again, I think he's going to get better, but it has to get better in order for Vanderbilt to be better.
Well, Pippen's defense has been much discussed, and frankly, it's been really bad at times, but he's more advanced offensively than I thought, and I'm pulling up the box score as we speak. I believe he had last night 5 assists and no turnovers. He has showed some surprising offensive competency, and to go into a place where they'll get after you defensively and do that in your first game at a team that's got a ton of confidence based on the Final Four appearance last year and its winning streak this year. Again, the defense needs a lot of work, but offensively, I'm seeing a lot there. You talk about them needing that third guy offensively. I think he can be that a lot of nights.
Yeah, and you're right. I mean, you look at the box score, and you have 9 turnovers, under double-digit turnovers against a team like Auburn that, tries to pressure you and turn you over, and, they get in the passing lanes, and they're pretty aggressive. 9 turnovers at Auburn. Listen, I think any team would go into Auburn and say, hey, we got a chance of winning if we only have 9 turnovers against Auburn. And that was as a team. So, you're right. I think that Scotty can be that guy. He was 0 for 5 last night. I mean, he had a couple decent looks, but again, you've got to have, in this situation, you got to have a total team effort. And we were doggone really close last night. Going down the stretch when Jordan Wright hit those 2 free throws to tie it up, the crowd in that place took just a big, sigh, saying, "Oh, we got it now. It's pressure on our offense to make a shot and that kind of thing," which they did. But at the same time, I don't think anybody in that gym was expecting it to be tied with less than a minute left.
Tim, the thing that I think cost them the game last night was lack of post presence. And you highlighted some things that Dessou and Abena did well at times, but just Auburn took the ball to the rack so many times, and nobody was waiting there to deter that. And it's a function of the roster. They can only play with what they have. And I think the closest thing they have to that quick twitch, get off the floor athlete, and you might even say this guy is it, is Clevon Brown, who is out right now. How much is that hurting them? Was he a guy that if he's on the floor last night, maybe they win that game?
That's a great possibility. He's a pretty solid defender. He has great timing on his jump. And if you really look at the stats, and that's the one thing I pointed out last night after the game when Joe and I were talking, is Auburn had 38 points in the paint. Okay. The key stat was they had 14 offensive rebounds and they had 23 second chance points. I ain't very good at math, but I can do that math. And you reduce the 23 second chance points off those 14 rebounds, and you probably win that game. To your point, having Clevon in there probably would have made a difference, because of his experience and, kind of what he does. He probably would have grabbed a few of those rebounds that Auburn got. But that stat right there has to get shored up, because you get 23 and you get 0. That's a recipe for a loss. And really, if you would give that stat probably to anybody that knows basketball and say, hey, Auburn had 38 points in the paint, had 14 offensive rebounds, had 23 second chance points, somebody would probably tell you, well, Vanderbilt got beat by 15 or 20, but they didn't. I mean, it was an amazing, just run where, Saben and Aaron just down the stretch in that, middle end of the second half, they were just making shot after shot after shot. Aaron Nesmith banks in a 2 kind of on a desperation shot. But, once again, it's one of those deals where, you can't pat yourself on the back on a loss. You got to win basketball games. But I think that stat of the second chance points and the offensive rebounding stuff and the points in the paint really, really hurt Vanderbilt.
Did you by chance see the box score of Arkansas LSU last night? Because I believe LSU out-rebounded Arkansas by 31, and yet Arkansas would have won that game had LSU not hit a shot in the last 12 seconds. So yeah, that's one that you don't see often. But back to Clevon Brown for a minute. Jerry Stackhouse told us after, I think, the Davidson press conference, I had asked him, when's he going to be back? He said, well, we should have some news on him coming soon, but it's not good. I keep hearing he's not done for the season, but he's not coming back anytime soon. Also, in case people are wondering, I don't believe he is eligible for a medical red shirt. When I asked Vanderbilt about that yesterday, they said that, and I think that fits the definition of the rule because I believe he has played in 9 games. I believe the standard is 25% or something like that, or 30. I don't remember what it was, but I think he's just over the standard to get a red shirt, in case people are wondering. Anyway, back to my question. Any clue of when he will get back?
Well, it's an MCL. To me, that's one of those injuries. It's not like an ACL where it says, okay, you got an ACL, injury, and it's probably going to be, you're done for the season. MCL, it's a sprain. So you just can't tell. And, last night, Clevon, I think, was wearing a brace. He had sweatpants over the top of it, but you could tell that he was limping. And so, MCL, if based on when he did it, and a couple of guys that I've known over the years that have had MCL strains, it's 6 to 8 weeks, and that's if you heal right. So I don't think, I just don't think that anyone really knows. If I'm guessing, we're at January the 9th. I'm thinking probably mid-February at this point. Another month away probably before, and then when he comes back, you got to realize too, just from a conditioning cardio standpoint that, you now all of a sudden you got to play at an extremely high level. And you ride the bike and you do as much as you can to try to stay in shape, but at the same time, you're not in high end shape like you were before the injury.
Yeah, Liberty is the game where he got hurt, and that was December the 14th. So 2 months, like you said, that's right at mid-February.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and I think 8 weeks is, probably something that's when you start looking for him to maybe have a chance to come back. So, February 15th, that's a number of games away based on the schedule.
I'm going to go ahead to the mailbag, which is sponsored by our new partners at Simply a Fan, which provides baseball fans the opportunity to travel to ballparks around the country, enjoying the company, camaraderie, and fellowship of friends and strangers alike. Simply a Fan will be organizing trips to several Vanderbilt baseball road venues this season. We will keep you posted on when and where. Visit their website at simplyafan.com. First one from Mr. Vandy. What can they do in late game situations to be able to get the win?
Well, really, it was giving up offensive rebounds and second chance opportunities. That to me was the reason that they really lost the game. Now, I will say this: if you look at, they missed 8 free throws. So, again, that's been another thing, with this year's team. Of course, Auburn misses 10. They were 28-38. We were 17-25. But, when you go on the road, if you miss 8 free throws, you're looking at probably not winning the basketball game. But, again, I just think they had a really good chance of winning the game last night against a team like SMU. We got a little stagnant offensively, and then we just made a couple turnovers down the stretch that cost us games. Those kind of things can be remedied. Free throw shooting's got to get better, but anytime you're playing in a close game, it's free throws and turnovers, and that's kind of what happened, probably last night as well.
Door King wants to know what Vanderbilt can improve on. I will modify that a little bit because there's a lot of things they can improve on, and talent is going to limit that. What do you think is realistic there?
I just think, defensively, on the perimeter, I think we just got to, we like I said earlier, we got to square up and keep guys in front of us more. So we don't have the defensive breakdowns of, having to come over and help and that kind of thing, because there's going to be some teams that are going to, if we don't, there are going to be some teams that expose that. And, last night we got exposed a little bit especially on the offensive rebound. And when I say that is Auburn, the way they play, they shoot the basketball from deep. Okay. So normally a lot of those rebounds are coming long. Okay. So if you're in a situation where you get too far underneath the basket, you're trying to block your guy out, those rebounds come long. Now, all of a sudden, the rebounds are out, Auburn gets it, and you're in what I call scramble mode, okay? You're trying to get to perimeter shooters from, the middle of the lane. And, that thing right there really, I think, cost Vanderbilt a little bit last night, because what happens is they get the rebound, they kick it to the wing, and you go out to close out on them as fast as you can because they shoot threes. And they head fake you, and boom, that they put it on the deck, and they're by you. And so now all of a sudden you get broken down again. You come over to help, boom, they kick it out to the 3-point line, boom, you got to go close out on them again. They did that to us about 4 or 5 times last night on the offensive rebounds, where that second or third kick off the offensive rebound resulted in a drive to the basket and a layup. So again, we got to square up on guys, keep them in front of us, and we got to do a better job in not letting, teams have offensive rebounds.
Anything else that we didn't get into that's worth mentioning today?
Oh, no. I mean, I just think they got to keep working, I think Dylan DeSue, he got frustrated last night. You could tell, the young kid, freshman, and the refs called a couple fouls on him, which, there was a couple that were probably, questionable, but, he looked and it was like, that's not a foul. But again, refs call it, blow the whistle and, you get your third foul in the first half and you got to go sit. But I think he's starting to figure it out. The game's probably starting to slow down for him a little bit. And, he's a guy that can jump up and knock down shots and that kind of thing. And again, Scotty's got to get better defensively from a standpoint of keeping guys in front of him and helping us offensively. But, if you can get those two guys to, dramatically improve as you go into the season, that you got a chance, because you got two guys, Aaron and Scotty, or Aaron and Saben, that can put points on the board and carry you.
He is Tim Thompson, the color commentator for Vanderbilt men's basketball. I'm Chris Lee, the host of the Vandy Sports Podcast. We appreciate you listening. Tim, thank you for joining us, and we will catch you again next week.
Thanks, Chris. Appreciate it.